in that manner. What people don't think about when they talk about nailing height, and especially nailing alignment, is that it's a lot easier to drive a high nail on the medial aspect or the inside of the foot than it is on the lateral aspect. And so if you look at people's nailing height and alignment, what you'll normally see is they've got a fairly good height and alignment on each side, but from side to side it doesn't match up. And so what I do is, I'll back up. What I do when I'm working on a compliant animal, if I'm nailing up a pig, he's going to get what he deserves. I don't care two shits about my nailing height and alignment. But if I've got a compliant animal that will cooperate with me, then what I will do is I typically drive my medial toenail first. I'll back up again. On a clipped shoe, I'll drive my toenails first and suck those clips back into the berm. On an unclipped shoe, I'll go to the wider part of my foot and drive my heel nails first, so I don't drag everything back and slide back off my toe. So first order of business is whether it's a clipped or an unclipped shoe. Since I hardly ever nail anything on that's not clipped, my normal practice is that I'll drive my medial toenail first, and I tap with my finger where I'm expecting that nail to come out. The minute I either hear it or feel it break through the wall, I stop. I go to my lateral toenail and I drive it and see if it's going to come out at that same place. If it's not coming out, if it's coming out lower or higher, then I'll pull it and start over and make my adjustment. So I want my medial nails and my lateral nails to be the same height. And that's what people miss out on all the time. You'll see a really pretty foot, then you get to looking at it close, and all the medial nails are 1/4 of an inch higher than the lateral nails. And so that's just something you got to account for and adjust for. But drive that nail until it breaks through the dorsal wall. The minute that it does, stop, go to the other side, and drive that nail. And if they're coming out at the same height, you got the same amount of nails sticking up above your shoe, you're good to go. And so that's the way I do it. If I need to make adjustments, I'm gonna cheat any way I can to get a nail higher or lower. We all know how to get a nail lower by fish hooking it or whatever. If I want to get it higher, it's more difficult, isn't it?
Right.
So I want to get a nail higher. It's coming out too low. I'm going to stick the bevel of that nail on the toe of my shoe, and I'm going to take the bevel out with my driving hammer. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
So I'm gonna take that bevel out, and that nail's going to come higher. So you want it to come out higher, change the bevel or the pitch on the end of the tip of that nail, and you can get it to come higher. You want it to come out lower, you're going to give it a little twist or a hook, fish hook the hell out of it, whatever. But you can make those adjustments. And if you're really gutsy and you need to drive one higher, turn it backwards, drive it about 1/3 of the way, and then yank it out, give you a path to follow. But you got to watch how deep you're willing to do that. It'll come back and bite you on the ass if you're not careful. So Does that help?
That does, tremendously.
So that's just, the other thing is, and you know, if you're competing or in a certification, you're always a little bit worried about how much you block and how much you've got a hole above your nail. But you, after a while, you get to where you know how to block to make an adjustment too. And you know, I'll block one nail off hard, I'll block another one off light, just because that's gonna adjust my height. And I'm talking, you know, just a little bit. It's not gonna make a huge difference. But you can block heavy or light to help get your height on those nails to look better. And sometimes you may need to come back with some filler and make sure that it doesn't show up that you've got a blocked one a little heavy. That, anybody else got any tips on that? The biggest thing is observation, and it's what we're the worst at. But observing what is there, and you know, I was shoeing for years before I thought about nailing height and alignment in it as to both sides of the foot. I'd just look at one side and say, oh, that's nice. I'd look at the other side and say, oh, that's nice. And then I'd go to the front and never notice that they were staggered down at my toenails, and I had low lateral, high medial. So looking at the big picture is important. What else?
I have a question. I do a very thin wall friend. And whenever I block and clench, it always seems, even though I feel like in my head I'm thinking, okay, pull them up, you know, pull up when you're in, but I always seem to drag it, you know, the nails down, and it's like, I don't know if it's because it's a thin walled horse or it's just something I'm doing wrong and I think I'm doing it right, but I'm not.
Thin walled horses are a nightmare, and they'll just make you want to bang your head on the moon. If you're over blocking, you're going to do it. It's going to show up more on that thin walled horse than it is on anything else. And so there are several ways to address that. Number one is I'm always going to choose the smallest nail I can get away with. And so it's, I mean, it's not unusual for me to nail on a number 2 shoe with an E4 or an E3. If I can get away with a smaller nail, I will. And on a thin walled thoroughbred, I'm not going to pull out a Slim Blade 5 if I can pull out a Race 5, or a Plater Special, or something of that sort. And so I think it's important to use the smaller nail on those horses, and you can take like a just hammer block instead of clinch block, and not actually brace off under it, and then do a 2-stage clinch on top rather than a single-stage clinch. Does that make sense?
What's that 2-stage?
Okay, a 2-stage clinch, you're going to either use your pull-offs or your clinchers to angle that nail back to the position that you would have used your clinch block to do it.
Okay.
And then you're going to clinch it again.
Okay.
And
I do bend them down, underneath the part.
so But it's very difficult to deal with these thin-walled horses, and
They're real bad. I'm actually not even clinched. I mean, I'm not blocked.
well,
If it's
yeah.
seated on the shoe good,
yeah,
then come and pull it.
absolutely,
And then do 2-stage.
Yeah.
If you can keep the shoe on.
yeah.
And if you have a
And-
problem with pulling the shoe, then you're going to probably have to go
And
block.
and what keeps the shoe on? Does a clinch keep a shoe on? I don't believe so.
A lot of the high.
I mean, I think clinches are highly overrated. You know, you drive a blind nail that doesn't even come out. You come back in 5 weeks or 4 weeks, and it's still there, and it's still working. I think we overrate clinching, and what's going to hold that shoe on is the friction and the grip between the nail and the hoof wall, and it's also going to be tied to the fact that you started it in the white line instead of the outer wall, and so you go to a foot that you have got 5-6 weeks on that shoe, and you pull it off. Where are your nail holes wallered out?
Usually the hind nail. The hind nail.
Behind your nail in your
Third
number
nail.
3 hole,
Right.
and especially the number 3 medial hole, is going to have more rounded, more waller in it than any other spot. And so that's where your movement is, and that gets me to one of my pet peeves. It's a long foot. Right here, what happens right there? It's going to be where your quarter crack is, isn't it? That's your quarter. That quarter is, to me, one of the most important things that you will ever deal with in making a shoe or trimming a foot, because it's a joint. As far as functionally, that is a joint, and what you have is you have bony connection in the front of that foot. You have cartilaginous connection in the back of that foot. And that quarter is your dividing line between the two. So you've got stability here, and you've got movement, hydraulic movement back there. And so to me, this is a point of articulation. It's a point of articulation. It's a division. It's like the trailer hitch on that truck. It's gonna, think about an articulating tractor. That's your stress point. It's the most important point, but it's the most easily broken down point because of the stress it takes. And so if we miss our quarter, we've changed all of our stress levels in that hoof capsule. So we trim it to find the quarter, we shoe it to exaggerate the quarter. That's my feeling. And to me, everything that goes wrong in a foot is usually a result of a failure in the quarter. What also is here? Remember I said you've got bony connection and cartilaginous connection, right? So what's also here is your collateral cartilage. So you got a quitter in a foot. It's an infection of the collateral cartilage, right? You got, you need to put on a shoe that is going to support one side of that foot because of a breakdown in that cartilage. We've got almost everything that can go wrong is going to go wrong there. I exaggerate that with my shoeing in two ways. I exaggerate it with the idea of making sure that I'm locating my quarters in my appliance to match to what they are in the foot. And I also exaggerate it because you go follow my shoeing and look at the horses that I've shod over the past month, 90% of them will be 4 nails. And it'll be the number 1 and 2 nail holes and nothing behind it. I want movement in the back of that foot. And so people say don't nail behind the widest part of the foot. I don't even nail at the widest part of the foot. I'm going to fix that shoe to match the anatomy of this hoof capsule. So I want it fixed here and I want it mobile here. Does that make sense?
And it doesn't matter the size.
It doesn't matter.
So you're going 1 and 2.
I will typically go 1 and 2. I mean, I cheat that. I don't always do it. A lot of times when if I go back and do a reset,
that's on 5 weeks.
I use about half of my horses are on 4 weeks, half of them are on 5.
So going to 6.
What's that?
Going to 6.
I don't have.
It doesn't make a difference.
I don't have anything at 6, but it wouldn't make a difference.
Okay.
But all of my Indiana horses are on a 5. All of my Kentucky horses are on a 4, and I like that. I used to think I was cheating people if I went to a 5-week or 4-week schedule, and then after about 20 or 30 years of shoeing, I realized I was cheating me and the horse, because at 6 weeks during good growth season, I'm recovering a foot.
Right.
At 5 weeks, I'm maintaining a foot, and so I want to maintain that foot, not recover it. And if I let him go 6, 7 weeks, I'm recovering. When I'm recovering it, if I lose an 1/8 of an inch forward growth, no big deal, right? He's an 1/8 of an inch more forward than he should be. But if I lose that same 1/8 of an inch next time, I'm up to a 1/4. I lose it 2 more times and I'm up to a 1/2. And I'm starting to chase that foot. And I'm chasing that damn capsule. And if I can avoid losing that 1/8 every time, it makes my life easier. It makes my work easier. It makes that horse happier, and so forth. Now, that varies depending on the horse. If I've got a high-low horse, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, if I've got a high-low horse and I don't do him at 4 weeks, he's going to lose performance. He's going to move great for the first 2 weeks of the cycle, and then it's going to be like you flipped a switch. It's not a clutch. It's not gradual. It's a switch. It goes on and on. You're going to go out and ride him one day, and he's going to be fine. You go out the next, and somebody flipped the switch, and he's out of rhythm and asymmetrical. And so if I've got a high-low horse, he's on a shorter cycle, automatically. If I've got a long pasturing horse, he's on a shorter cycle, automatically. Simply because your foot will get away from you. And it's so damn obvious when you stop and think about it, but we don't stop and think about it. And it takes, all of a sudden you're shoeing 15, 20 years and the obvious hits you. So that's, I think that's important to look at the horse and determine what the cycle should be, not just generically create a time frame. Yes, sir.
I got a question. You were talking about swimming every 4 weeks. I've come across this before. What the old nail holes have not grown down enough, but they're still low enough you can't use them.
Yeah.
I'm sucking that nail up and they're going to weaken the hook roll a little bit.
Yeah. When you start going on that shorter cycle, you will have issues with your nail holes.
And does that feel real hot and fine? You can get it.
Yeah. Yeah, I got no problem reusing a nail hole if it's at the right height.
But if it's like
And,
that, you can't use it.
I call it going green and recycling. I'm gonna recycle that nail hole if I can. But if it's down enough, and especially on a thin-walled horse, and you don't have enough, there's where my 4 nails comes in to help me out. Because I'm gonna typically on my first cycle, I'm gonna go 1 and 2 on both sides of the foot. I come back to do a reset on that horse, and I don't have enough there. I'm gonna go 1 and 3 or 2 and 3, and so I'm gonna use a new nail hole because I didn't use it the first time. I've got it there waiting on me.
Well, that's one thing I like about sucking sitting behind nails. You can use that hole for 6 months.
Yeah. I mean, I love a high nail. I want a nail to gasp for air when it comes out of the foot. I want a high nail. The reason I want a high nail, yeah.
Being nails in both. You see a horse, you only 4 nails.
On a clipped shoe,
Oh,
I only use, and I clip almost everything. I only use 4. And on an unclipped shoe, depending on the quality and integrity of the hoof capsule, I'll sometimes use 4. Especially on a small foot, But no, I don't get too carried away about trying to fill up all the nail holes just because God or Con or whoever put them there.
He hadn't grown enough foot, so it wound up having to angle the nails. Where you got old nail holes and your new nails are right in line with the old nail holes. That's crazy.
Yeah.
The 4 deal, you can better use the other nail holes.
Exactly.
Miss everything, the other hole.
Exactly. Just, and, I see people fill up all the nail holes. I certainly did at one point, but I started moving to fewer and fewer nails, and I haven't lost any more shoes as a result of it.
It's pretty much a telltale.
Yeah.
On the 3rd nail, like for a reset, when they are wallowed out, that's the only one that's usually wallowed out immediately. You go back to the same size nail, or you go back to a little bit bigger impact.
He asked if I was resetting and I had a nail hole that was wallowed out, do I go back with a larger nail? And I typically don't. What I do is I take a stud punch and I go to the back side of that shoe and I slam that stud punch down and it resizes that nail hole. And I used to do it with a center punch and go around the edges and everything, and it wouldn't hold. But if you take that stud punch and set it down, it'll do it. Clay, have you got a stud punch? You got a stud punch?
I don't have any.
Oh, okay.
button on the screen.
All right.
And then you're ready. All right.
So I would much rather resize that nail hole than to go to a larger nail. So that's usually what I do. And like I say, if you're using a stud punch to do it, it'll resize and it'll hold for 4 or 5 weeks. I used to, like I say, I'd take a center punch and try to cheat it and squeeze it back together, and it was uneven, and it'd hold for about a week or 2, and I'd get a call for a lost shoe, and I'd say, yeah, I did that to myself.
Well, yes.
You know,
That's why I'm wondering.
but now using a stud punch, it they'll hold for a cycle. Mr. Macbeth.
You know, you were talking about short cycling the horses and shooting 4 or 5 weeks. The majority of our customers have been mandated and taught over the years doing 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's not right for the horse. Most horses, if they're performing and fed good, they're going to roll their foot from doing it 4 weeks.
Yeah.
But the people out here, and I'm going to say this, and maybe some people aggravated, we don't work for the horsemen anymore. All the horsemen have died. You talk to racehorse people, the show horse people, the saddlebreds, the good horsemen are gone. We're doing it with pet owners. The pet owners want to go by the cattle. They don't know about it. Well, Fluffy right here hurts when she gets long. Because like Danvers says, once you get past 4 weeks, you're chasing and maintaining that horse's deal. Why do you think the vets love these long feet and long deals? Vets are making a fortune right now by injecting all these things. You know, you got to work on the horse, not a cow. And the people we're working for, this is another deal. We're not subsidizing their hobbies. Yep. These horses, you got to keep them going. If they're doing anything with them, they got to be maintained on the proper schedule. And it's cheaper to pay. It's like an old story years ago. Phil was scary and Rufus was uncle. Phil was at this boy up there, Brownie was a trainer, big old boy up there in Nashville. And they were unloading for the money. And Phil was called in the office and he told us, if you leave, don't unload. I got to go in there and talk to Brownie. So we may be fired because you went up on the price of shoes. And in the office, Brownie went through and started pulling out vet records and vet bills. He said, this was my vet bills for 3 months ago. Since you started shoeing these and everything back on schedule like they used to be, my vet bills, my shoeing bills went up a little bit, but my vet bills went down to nothing. So it all works like that. And you can't subsidize these owners' property.
I've got a jumper barn that I do in Indianapolis, and they called me. I shot for them 30 years ago for about 10 years, and they started getting into money trouble, and they said they needed to go cheaper, and I found them a different horseshoe that would shoe for them at a better price, and or a better price for them, and they called me back about 5-6 years ago and said, can you start doing the horses again? And I took the barn back and I told him, I said, he asked what it was going to cost. And he said, that's $60 more a horse than I'm currently paying. So I'm going to have some clients that are not going to be happy. And I said, you know, I'm not going to discount it. He said, I know, I'm not asking you to. I just want you to know it's going to be a struggle. So at the end of a year, he did a spreadsheet for his clients that showed them how much more they had spent on horseshoeing and how much less they had spent on vet bills. And they had saved money, considerable amount of money, because they didn't have the vet bills that they had had. And, you know, part of it, I want to pat myself on the back and say what a damn good horseshoer I am. But part of it was getting them on a tighter schedule and doing maintenance. One of the things, and I told you, squirrel, you know, I'm on sidetrack. One of the things that I realized about 10 years ago. Pat Broadus turned my life around in terms of, I used to call myself a horseshoe, and now I call myself a small business owner. I started becoming a businessman at a point where I should have been retiring, but I finally figured out that I needed to be a better businessman. And so one of the huge things that I did that changed my schedule, my income, was I had always kept my clients on a schedule of 4 or 5 weeks, but I had I'd sit down when I got ready to leave, and I'd look at my calendar and say, 5 weeks is going to be the 12th. I can't do the 12th, so I'd look at the 13th or the 14th or the 15th. I was going the wrong damn direction. You start looking at that and you say, I can't do that day. You start going backwards in that calendar, not forwards. And all of a sudden, you'll have a whole shoeing cycle added in a year that you didn't have before. And, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Simply by going backwards in your calendar and cheating it 3 days in your favor and the horse's favor, instead of cheating it 4 days in their pocketbook's favor. And it's a mindset, and you got to get into it. And I think it's important. What else? All right. So we got a PowerPoint here. I don't know if y'all be able to see it that well or not, but we may have to huddle up a little bit. But a lot of you probably know I'm obsessed with high-low conditions, and the high-low stances and movements, and high-low horses have intrigued me my whole career. So I want to talk about it. Is there any strong feelings about high-low that we need to start with?
I don't know if it necessarily fits into that.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was like,
Do you change that schedule on ailing horses, navicular, founder? Is that a tighter schedule? It's just the feel of the horse, or?
I'm going to tell you right now that I try to avoid doing therapeutic work. I do not like therapeutic work. I'm capable of doing some of it, but I hate it. And so I refer it out. You got a foundered horse? I'm going to send you to somebody else that I think is good at it, and let him get it recovered, and then I'll take it back over. Yes, sir.
you forgot to mention, you learned that from Jim Lindsay. Jim said you'd have shot horses and made money or shoot cripples and go broke.
Exactly. I did learn a lot from Mr. Lindsay. Now why do you go broke chewing cripples?
The time it takes to do it, the stress you're under, and of course, if he's so crippled, there's only one way he's going to go, and that's down. And the easiest way to fix that is use a high-speed lead implant at 3,200 feet per second.
Yeah.
Or check him for rabies.
Yeah. Checking for rabies is always a good approach.
Right.
I think it's impossible to schedule therapeutic work. You may need to come back tomorrow. You may need to come back in 4 weeks or 5 weeks. You may need to come back in 1 week. And so that's the number one thing for me, is you can't keep a schedule unless you're working in a vet clinic with that horse in the clinic. And so I think I hate it first because of that. Second, if you're under an uncomfortable horse, there's no way that you're going to be comfortable. It is hard on your body. I don't care if you've got drugs on board or if the horse has drugs on board. It's hard. It's hard on you. And so I don't like that part of it. Third is there's a lot of mental and emotional elements that come into play. In large part, back to what Sandy said earlier about we used to shoot for horsemen and now we shoot for pet owners. And, you know, I mean, Fluffy is the most important creature in the world, more so than Charlie Kirk. And I don't understand that mentality, but that's, you know, the mindset that people have is crazy at this point. And so there's just too many issues associated with therapeutic work. Some people love it, and that's great. I like that because I can refer to it. But we all have to have something that motivates us to put our butt in the truck seat every morning and go shoot horses. And for me, that's performance. I shoot performance horses. I want to take that horse that is running an 18 and get him to run a 17.8. I want to take that horse that is scoring a 68 on his dressage test and get him to score a 71. I want, you know, I want to affect performance. I also want to perfect longevity. And I don't know how to measure that. Well, I know how to measure it for me because I'm antique enough that I went out on the way to the airport. I stopped and trimmed a horse that's 36 years old that I've been doing since he was a yearling. And he went to Devon and Wellington and everywhere in the damn world. And now he's got a little girl that gets on him and gets led around, and he's got one eye, and his pasterns are dropped down to the fetlocks on the ground, and but I kept him going and performing for years, and I've got a bunch of those horses that I did their entire life, and they had good, strong, active careers into their late teens and 20s, and I felt that I was a part of that, you know. So, but longevity and performance are the things that put my butt in the truck seat every day. And therapeutic, if I had to shoot therapeutic, I'd be a greeter at Walmart. I couldn't do it. I go in, my good friend Tommy Tucker, I live 8 miles from Purdue Vet School. And my good friend Tommy Tucker does the horses there. And he lost a thumb a couple of years ago, and I had to go in and work one day a week at the vet clinic and cover for him for 3 months. And I told him, I said, man, if I had to do this every day, I'd just take a hot Pritchard and stick it in my eye. And I don't know how you do it. And he said, I love it. Give me a lot, boy. But, give me a lot. Absolutely. So it's, you know, you got to find what you enjoy doing. For some people, you know, they want to focus on a discipline. And I think focusing on a discipline will make you really good. It's also dangerous as hell. there was a fellow named Charlie Brown shoeing out in Arizona. Charlie specialized in Arabs. Charlie was the #1 Arab shoer in the world. He did the Arab World show that went on for almost 2 months. It was the longest show in the country. And then he went to Canada and did the Canadian Arab Nationals, and that was a month-long show. And he had 3 barns that he was shoeing at on top of those 2 big shows that were taking 3 months out of his year. He had 3 barns that had about 200 horses each in those barns, and he was the shit. He was the horseshoer when it came to Arabs. And then all of a sudden, in the mid-'70s, the bottom fell out of the Arab market, and they went from being $100,000 horses to going to the local sale. And within a 3-month period, all 3 of Charlie's accounts went bankrupt. The 2 big shows that he was working dropped in attendance by over 50%. And Charlie survived because a bunch of us were sending him 1 horse a month. Would send a check to Charlie to help him get back on his feet. And then but Charlie said, he said, I was going to the local feed stores and such and hanging up business cards on the bulletin boards, and people were talking about the new horseshoer in town, and I had lived here my whole life, and nobody knew who I was because I specialized to an extent that kept me sheltered away from everybody. It took him years to recover.